Good afternoon, Thali. How you doing? You well?
I'm blessed and abundant, thank you.
Oh, brilliant, man. That's good to hear, man. It's not an answer I hear often, so good to speak to you. Listen, the reason we're touching base today is because you're a sound girl. You're a sound girl with a difference. So I want you to explain to our audience a little bit about your background in playing sound, and just kind of talk about the unconventional nature of your presence in the scene. And then let's get to the exciting stuff, which is a product that you're doing a crowdfund at the moment, which actually really excites me. So tell everybody about who you are.
No, absolutely. So yes, I'm Thali Lotus, and I founded Kaya SoundSystem, which stands, so it's C-A-Y-A, it stands for Come As You Are. And I established that in 2016. And it's a roots and dub sound. And it was very much how it came about was my kind of own philosophical journey and searching into self, really. Brought up in Northwest London, and my dad had a sound system, and so grew up with that as very much my foundation, So it was very much aware of sound system. And I think because I've got two older sisters, my time with my dad was very much spent with him with the sound, because it was my only time. So I kind of got into sound, and I think music more so because of that. And then music just has always been a huge part of my life. During my adolescence, struggled quite a bit with lots of things happening, and music has always been a major coping mechanism and help for me. So it's almost as though Kaya, the sound, or Kaya existed way before its physical manifestation. It kind of came about through, I think it was like a comfort for me during my adolescence years, in almost like an imaginary friend, but in the form of music. And then kind of, as I went, through life and went to the Brits Performing Arts School, but then started asking more questions about, the reasons of life and that kind of thing. And that kind of led me into Buddhism, Rastafarianism, not really Rastafarianism, but yeah, just different kind of understandings of life. And that's what kind of led me into the sound scene, and going to carnival. And obviously being young, going to carnival, you kind of go with your parents and you just do what they do. But as an adult, I started kind of really developing my own feel for what I liked, and that led me to dub and Channel One. And it was actually at one of the Channel One Notting Hill events that I had almost like an epiphany that I had a sound. I was with a sister and I had a sound, and that, it was a huge success. And I phoned her the next day and I said, I had a dream that I had a sound. And she said, you know what? You can make it happen, and you'd probably leave the places a lot tidier than the man then. And we had a lot. And we laughed. And then I spent like the next year researching sound. So I spent time with Free Rocket up in Nottingham, Coxon, Black Cat Sound, and really just getting a feel for what sound, what the elders' kind of interpretation of what sound was, from them saying, well, you need a preamp really for it to be a sound, or you need to play vinyl, etc. But it's really just understanding. So I suppose it was the anthropologist in me kind of just wanting to know more and learning, because obviously with roots music, for me, it was an education as well. So thereafter I then went about designing the sound. So I knew what I wanted the sound to do and what I wanted it to look like, then chose a box builder and decided that at first I was just going to use a mixer, and then with time I kind of changed. I had initially I had a Tubbies, and then I bought it secondhand, and then I went on to have my own one built by Mostec, who's like, if you're going to get a preamp built, I feel like Yeah, so anyway, that happened, the sound launched, and for the past 3-4 years, I've spent, you know, up and down the UK doing amazing things, you know, working with universities, you know, so academic institutions, the British Library, obviously have putting on my own events and my own sessions, creating short films, all derived around the kind of ethos of coming as you are, which I felt that roots and dub music, that's what the essence of it was. You know, I was very particular about what I called the sound, because I still see it as I'm literally the vehicle that brings the message. So it was important for me not to be a clashing sound. You know, at one point when I was deciding on the name, how the name actually came about, I went to see a sound in London, and I was kind of like a bit worried because I didn't have much. I didn't have any vinyl, I didn't have anything. And he said to me, well, you know, he was a Ras, and he said to me, well, you know, when we started out, we didn't have anything, but the importance is you just come as you are. And just like that, Kaya came, because before then I was thinking about Rebel Woman, but for me, it was important that it wasn't contentious, because the message of the music had to be upheld. So I didn't want my ego to get involved in it and for it to be like, Kaya this, Kaya that, Kaya's got the heaviest bass, or Kaya's got the best. I don't actually play dubs, I play the music in its purest form. So yeah, that's how Kaya really came to be. And obviously then what happened, so yeah, the past 3 years have been really, really great, working with amazing sound systems, organizations, people from Jayut Sound to Young Warrior to, yeah, there's so many, I can't even think now, but those are the ones that kind of, you know, Festus Coxon, People Sounds, you know, so it's been a real blessing. But what I'd say about 2-3 years, and I started thinking about the legacy of Kaya. I have a daughter, and what that looked like for 50 years. Obviously, the sound system history in this country is about 60, 70 years old, and obviously came about through the migration with the Windrush, etc. And I started thinking about how what things would look like in another 70 years. You know, there's a lot more restrictions. Vinyls, yes, are being pressed, but not in the same way. Music isn't being made in the same way. So I started thinking about what 70 years from now would look like. And then also came the pandemic last year, which then really expressed, you know, or kind of superseded what was happening, and caused me to pivot, or I had no other choice but to pivot.
Before you get into the pivot, just as a sound head, just as a man who grew up on sound and sound music, and it's interesting to hear that you didn't want to get into clashing. Black Cat, did I hear you just throw that in just casually?
Black Cat Sound System.
Yeah. Who was the selector when you was close to that?
Ras Tom.
Okay, because they were quite a big deal, if I remember correctly. That's quite a, in terms of experiences on the come up, and you mentioned your father, and I guess you'll get more into that, but in terms of experiences and being exposed to, you know, people at the sharp end of the industry of that space, that's quite a way to cut your teeth, right? That's quite a learning curve.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, obviously, I was a complete novice. Don't get me wrong, I've got the foundation from my dad, but I was very, very young. And it was, as I said, it was more so bonding through sounds, you know, so there wasn't as much learning as you know, someone going to, I don't know, to learn it at college or something, or learn electronics, even though I did go on to do that.
Yeah.
It's not the same. So yeah, it kind of, yeah, it has been a lot of learning and a lot of, I think a lot of just going for it, you know, like, obviously the environment is it is what it is, and it's very traditional in what it does. So there has been a lot of learning for me. But I feel like it's, what I've been able to do is, learn a lot. And then I feel like my almost superpower is the innovation and what kind of sound system goes on to look like in the future.
Let's just stick with innovation for a second before we get back to operating in a predominantly masculine world, because that's what SoundSystem is. And I'm guessing when you're referring to learning, that's what you're talking about, navigating the space as a woman. We'll get to that in a second, but you pivoted last year as a result of the pandemic and, I guess moving into thinking about, what the future is going to look like if you're not just playing sound. So talk about the innovation that you brought to market or are trying to bring to market, attempted to bring to market, the reason why, or the second reason why we're speaking today.
Absolutely. So, as I said, owing to last year's obviously world pandemic, prior to that, I had been thinking about sustainability more and the legacy of Kaya past my lifetime, and just really trying to encourage the next generation, etc. And started thinking about creation. I am a creative. We are creators. We create a lot as a people in terms of music, in terms of dance, in terms of poetry, etc. We're very, very blessed. But in terms of things like tech and audio, I still don't think that we're there, and we're still quite reliant on other sources. Not that that's bad, but I just felt like it was a space to really expand. And so last year, owing to the pandemic, that kind of really, can't think of the word that I want to say, but it kind of not excelled, but it really accelerated, that's it, those thoughts. And that then led me to designing a microphone. And so I got a small team together, an electronic engineer and a mechanical designer who I actually, they kind of work not for me, but with me. I pay them, etc., etc. So we've been steadily working on this for the past 14, 15 months. And inevitably now have a product that we want to take to market, bring to market. Why I chose the mic is because I think that, as I referred to earlier, I was thinking about sustainability, but also music has been a core part of my life. It's who I am. It's an innate thing for me. And at one point I felt like I lost my voice. I lost my voice. I had a lot of trauma in my adolescence, and I lost my voice. And I would say it wasn't until later on that I kind of rediscovered my voice and the importance of my voice. For example, and the importance then that, having a voice meant to what I do to my daughter, and, it being amplified. I feel like there are lots of things that, or lots of people who have a voice and, obviously are heard, and it's not always the right thing. So for me, the mic was very important. Like, for example, without the microphone, we would never have heard Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, for example. And it's little things like that, don't get me wrong, the words are powerful, but the actual technology behind it is even more so something that I think is crucial. Me speaking to you now, telephones, etc., the whole technological side of things, it's really it's huge. And obviously I'm starting off with this dynamic microphone, but the range, Kaya audio range, will expand. And I just think it's unmuting the world. That's the kind of ethos of Kaya, to unmute the world, to amplify the voices of people, and to get the unheard heard. I think. What
do you need, Thali? What's the target?
I need £10,000, and this money will be for stock, for packaging, for marketing, and to get it, as a product which is on the shelf and in line with all others. That's what I need. I've fronted a lot of the cost myself already, and so this additional money will just secure the the additionals which are necessary to bring in a really high-end quality product to market, because I feel like I don't want to scrimp. I actually want to demonstrate, you know, excellence when it comes to this. And whilst it may not be the final, you know, it will improve with time, but I want to do my best at delivering what I'm capable of, and really giving the best to the people that need it most and amplifying those voices.
Have you got the endorsement of other sound people?
Sound systems?
Yeah, people in the sound business. Has anybody?
Not as yet, no, I haven't. I have kind of attempted to contact, obviously I've got an active social media page, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. But unfortunately, I think part of that is, one thing that I didn't mention is Kaya acts almost as a hybrid between the sound world and the audio world. They kind of exist as two separate, entities, and that sound is very much a cultural representation of us and our music and us as creators, whereas audio is more so seen as a shop front, as the mass manufacturing.
Oh, I was more inquiring as to whether people in that space, being musically inclined and audio inclined, would have sampled the wares. That's kind of why I was pursuing that line of questioning.
No, they have. I haven't had.
Might be something you want to pursue in terms of just getting people to endorse your product and just utilize it in whatever setting they find fit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, let's revert back to a bit about you, because and where can people make this donation first?
So it's currently live on Crowdfund UK. So if you put in Kaya mics, then it will come up. So it's a Kaya X3E. That's a product that's being brought to market. The X3E stands for Educate, Empower, and Entertain, because those are the three environments and settings that Kaya really excels. So yeah, if you go into Crowdfunder UK and you type in Kaya audio mics, then it will pop up.
Now, I won't tell people your birthday, but we already established before we did this interview that you're January born. Like my daughter, strong-willed, strong-minded, no ego. So tell me a little bit about navigating through the world of SoundSystem and just the music industry from your personal perspective, because it's, I guess, slightly different for you, and the good bits, the bad bits, and how you would like to see the space evolve and be more embracing of women like yourself who want to explore that element of creativity within them.
Yes. So the SoundSystem space over the past 4.5 years has been, an education in that I don't think I could have imagined what it would be like. And I'd say it was, majority has been good. Obviously, it's very male dominated, and I have experienced a lot of discrimination. Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot, but I have experienced things that I know factually would never happened had I been another man's sound, a male sound. For example, people just walking up and taking my mic, for example, just holding my mic, which is, that could cause a lot of problems had it been another male sound, for example, or just being played out, or not having the opportunity to play. I'm playing with someone and they just don't allow me to play. Like, it's meant to be, free, and it's like an hour later, and people have actually said, have they forgotten your hair, kind of thing. So, things like that. But for me, sound world, you have to be very strong-willed to make it in and to make it, and to sustain. I think why Kaya has excelled, and achieved what it has in the past 4 years is because what I always wanted to model myself on was being different. You know, every sound wants to be different, but I wanted it to be different in an innovative way, hence why I wanted to collab with things which weren't necessarily just sound orientated, because that way I could really get the message of SoundSystem and you know, roots music and dub music out there, in terms of working with the British Library or working with Goldsmiths University. These were all organisations which they're not sound systems. So I think that's why Kaya has done so well. But yeah, it's not, you have to be very strong-willed and really have a kind of a real plan, a strategy as to what your, you know, sound in the 70s, you know, when you go back to Shaka and you go back to Channel One and you go back to Abashanti, you know, like at the real heart of their, or the height of what they were doing, it's a completely different world, completely different world. So entering into the sound system world now is like, you have to know and equip yourself to the environment and what it is that you want to establish. Because if it's to make money, it's something that isn't necessarily, you know, unless you're doing something really spectacular, you're not going to make a whole load of money. In terms of playing out, venues are becoming less and less. You know, we've seen a lot of our community buildings shut down and restrictors putting in terms of being able to play, how loud you can play. So I think it's about really having a strategy as to what you want from it and what you want to bring to it, because it has to be a to and fro. Like, yeah, I wanted to establish Kaya and, you know, to build sounds owing to, you know, my background, the music and my kind of, my journey in life, but I also wanted to add to it, you know, an innovation and extension.
What is your background? Where are your parents from?
So my mum is of Jamaican descent and my dad is Guyanese.
You've been to both?
Yeah.
And how do you compare the sound out there? Sound, just the way it's embraced?
Obviously, the very, very different in terms of Jamaican music being the heart of, I mean, reggae music being the heart of Jamaica. And obviously in Guyana, it's more so a mixture predominantly of calypso music and a lot of influences from America, obviously it being in South America, you know, and again, Latin music, because it is on the main continent of South America. So yeah, it's something that is quite, it's a multitude of sounds, more so in Guyana. Very different, I think. So yeah, my parents are obviously Caribbean, but ultimately I see myself as an African. And when I went to Sub-Saharan Africa for the first time, that's where I really resonated. And I feel like me and the roots music and dub, I think it's my ancestry, like, because my dad didn't play roots, he was a lot more lovers rock and a lot more rare groove. And so where I explained my journey into sound, but I feel like my real connection is, yeah, from my elders and from my ancestry there. Mm-hmm.
Both worlds, sound, Kaya audio. What does the top look like for you? What does success look like in your mind's eye?
Success looks like, you know, my microphone's in the hands of the most influential people, you know, and really being able to amplify the voice of you know, important messages in the hands of yeah, the most influential beings that there are in the most positive way, you know, and that's not restrictive of color and that's not restrictive of argument. It's just more so about really being able to be up there as something which is a reputable and important piece of technology that not only represents, audio, but represents that it represents kind of women in audio. It represents the importance of audio, and it represents the importance of the voice.
One more time, where can people support you?
Crowdfunding UK, if you type in Kaya Audio, mics to entertain, empower, and I can't even think, educate, entertain, empower. You find me at Crowdfunding UK. Also, my social media handles are audio.by Thali Lotus, and also at Kaya Audio also on Instagram. So Kaya spelled Caya, and then audio, and yeah, that's me.
Thali Lotus, thanks for your time. Good luck with everything moving forward. Appreciate it.
Incredible, incredible, incredible. Thank you so much. Blessings.